Welcome back to Question Period. The House of Commons rose this week for the holidays, bringing to an end the fall sitting. Well, we finally got a federal budget and some nail-biting make-or-break confidence votes legislatively. The sitting was really anything but productive. Just 3 pieces of government legislation passed the House of Commons. So what does that mean for the fate of this parliament? Will the parties find a path forward, or is an election likely next year? Davies is the interim leader of the NDP. Mr. Davies, pleasure to welcome you back to the studio. I appreciate you making the time.
Thanks for having me, Vashi.
I wanted to start off on the question of official party status in what you're willing basically to trade for it. If the Liberals end up needing a speaker to give them a majority, would you or your party volunteer one?
Geez, that's a hypothetical we haven't even considered, to be honest, Vashi. And to be honest, the whole official party status issue, I think, is dealt with already. You know, we sought that in June, and that door was closed. So really what we've been advocating for is resources for all the party caucuses, because we think that in a minority parliament, all the caucuses need to be reliable partners and be able to participate meaningfully in the debate and discussion. So that's something we continue to pursue. But the designation of official party status or not is not something that we particularly are pursuing at this time.
So let me follow up on kind of 2 aspects of that, on the resources part of it, but also on the hypothetical. I take your point that it is a hypothetical, but it sort of feels like a relevant one just given what's happened over the past few days. Is that something you would entertain if a request came your way?
To take a speaker spot?
Yeah, in exchange for the resources you're looking for.
You know, in a minority parliament, I think you have to be fluid and you have to be open. Like I said, we haven't had that proposal put to us, so I can't say that we've given any consideration to it. But, you know, any opportunity for New Democrats to meaningfully participate in this parliament and make it work and function better, I think we'd be prepared to look at.
So when it comes to those opportunities, particularly in exchange for additional resources, this week I listened to you at the end of the sitting talk about how you think Parliament could work more effectively, basically, if the NDP was on the receiving end of those additional resources. And I think the headlines that came out of that mentioned official party status, but I take your comment earlier. On that front, I guess I'm trying to understand what you mean by Parliament working better. Does that essentially entail, in exchange for additional resources, that the NDP would help support and advance a Liberal legislative agenda?
Mm-hmm. Well, you know what? We're not looking to enter into a transaction. As New Democrats, as Jack Layton used to say, our first obligation is to make Parliament work for Canadians. And that's our first, I think, objective is, you know, how can we make this Parliament address the very real problems, crises that Canadians are facing? We have a completely out-of-hand affordability crisis in this country. I don't think it's a secret now. You know, groceries are too high, rent's too high. People are concerned about their jobs. So I think Canadians want us to tackle those issues. In terms of my comments on Parliament working better, look, I mean, the Liberals got just a handful of bills passed in the last 8 months. So Parliament is not, I think, responding to those crises with the urgency and the, I guess, effectiveness that we could be. And so we as New Democrats are looking for ways that we can make Parliament work better. And if that means adjusting resources and allowing us to have more say in things and to participate more meaningfully, we'll always explore those.
Can I ask you specifically, though, because the accusation leveled against, for example, the opposition Conservatives is that they're employing tactics to, at the committee level in particular, delay, stall things because of the NDP's reduced ability to kind of throw around its weight in the way that it would have, for example, under the former Prime Minister. In that case, the NDP really helped the Liberals, I don't have to tell you, advance its legislative agenda. What exactly are you willing to do in those committees? Would it mean siding with the government? And isn't that problematic given the message rather voters sent you in the last election?
No, we're not making any promises to Liberals or anybody else. I mean, in exchange for anything, we'll support legislation that we believe is right and we'll oppose legislation that we think is wrong. My comments were directed more, Vashi, at the fact that there are no New Democrats on committees, and as you know, in Parliament, all legislation after second reading has to go to committees. And so if that process is not working well, and right now I would argue it's not, with Conservatives and the Bloc Québécois effectively teaming up to block or slow down legislation, and sometimes the Liberals too, the absence of New Democrats there to add a third option and to add our voice, which I think we've done effectively over the years, I think has it has damaged the ability of this Parliament to work as efficiently as it should have. So that's my point on it. But what I really want to talk about is I think how effective New Democrats have been in this Parliament. If you think back to April, there was a question about, would we be relevant? Would we have a voice as Parliament? And I think that we've demonstrated that we've been very relevant and have had a strong voice and had an impact in many ways. And that's something we're going to look in 2026 to build on.
Can I ask you, I mean this with great respect, what is the evidence of that? I think on a number of key priorities for the NDP around advancing pharmacare, for example, around additional money for affordable housing, around limiting cuts to the public service, you've largely been unsuccessful in getting that message through to the government.
Well, first and foremost, what we pledged foundationally back in May was that we were going to dedicate ourselves to bringing the voice of working people to this Parliament. And I think we're the only party that has done that reliably and consistently every day. But if you want to look at some concrete examples, I would say that, the Liberals made the school nutrition program permanent. That was originally a New Democrat idea. I'm not sure they would have done that without New Democrats there pushing for that and holding them accountable. We just saw the 6 millionth Canadian get access to the Canadian Dental Care Plan. Again, would the Liberals have rolled back that program without having the New Democrats there to be watching and holding them responsible if they did do that? We know the Conservatives wouldn't have done it. Finally, the Liberals have violated organized labor's collective bargaining rights repeatedly, and we're the only party in the House that has stood up and held them accountable. So sometimes it's not about whether you get legislation passed, Vashi, it's whether or not you are bringing political focus to government actions that will maybe act to restrain them. And I would say that New Democrats have done that.
And certainly, Mr. Davies, I take your point on the NDP exclusively in some of those instances, highlighting and advocating for the set of interests that you just described. But on the last example, in contravening organized labor rights, there is no evidence that that advocation has led to meaningful change at the government level. They have, in fact, repeatedly, as you said, done the opposite of what you're advocating for. Does that not undermine your argument of relevance?
Well, not really. We used our second private member slot, which will go to a vote and a debate in the House of Commons to repeal Section 107 of the Canada Labour Code, which is the section Liberals have used repeatedly to order flight attendants back to work, Canada Post Office employees back to work, port and rail workers back to work. So because New Democrats are there, we will have a debate in this House and we will be able to raise the arguments and ultimately force the Liberals to have a vote on whether or not they'll support that. And maybe the Conservatives and Bloc will support us on that as well. So I just think we've been impactful. We're a small caucus. Again, I take us back to May when people were wondering whether we'd be able to be impactful at all. And I would say that we have been.
You also said toward the end of the sitting that given the legislative track record that you talked about, the small number of pieces of legislation that have actually gone through the full process, that you thought there might be an election sooner rather than later. Since then, there's been another floor crosser. They're one seat shy as we started this conversation off of a majority. Do you still think that's the case, or do you feel like there's less of a chance of an election now?
Well, what that question brings to my mind, Vashi, is really the way that the Carney government has governed from right of centre. They have slashed public services, as you pointed out. They have rolled back environmental protections. They have attacked organized labor's rights. They have cut taxes for the wealthy. They cut taxes on yachts and private jets. And now we see two Pierre Poilievre conservatives, feel comfortable enough in a Mark Carney government that they would cross the floor to join it. So, of course, now they're one seat shy, so who knows what will happen in the new year. My suspicion is there may be more people coming from the Conservatives over to the Liberals. They may turn it into a majority government, but I think what it speaks to me is the New Democrats are the only party in the House of Commons who are bringing a progressive lens, progressive perspective to the issues of the day, as Carney is on the right of centre and of course Mr. Poilievre is to the right of that. So I think we're going to play a very important role in the Parliament, minority or majority, as we go into 2026.
80% of the people, though, more than 80% of the people who cast a ballot for one of those two parties. What does that say?
Well, it says we got work to do. And You know, we're adjusting to the new reality. I think that everywhere I go, I'm feeling growing support for the NDP and appreciation for the work that we're doing.
Okay, I'm going to leave it on that note. Mr. Davies, thank you very much. Happy holidays.
Thanks. Same to you, Vashti.
Coming up, Canada can count on us. That was the message from Microsoft's president during a visit to Ottawa this week. Why did he feel he had to say it? I'll ask Brad Smith next.